more exactly. So let's start that, like, what is the transit system in the Indian context? So hopefully everybody might have traveled at least one time. There's no doubt on that. The public transportation in India. It might be like bus, or it might be the rail, or it can be any other category of problem. Yes, sir. So according to you, like, what makes that the people they don't want to or hesitate to travel by bus or any kind of transit in India specifically? So before going to the lecture or like before going to the interactive, so we'll try to understand actually what makes the public to difficulty to travel by bus or travel by any transit system. So in the any of the scheme, frequency of the trips or like frequency of the operation of the system, unreliability travel probably. So that means mostly the public transit system is not reliable in terms of operation or in terms of the scheduling, in terms of frequency or in terms of the safety or not comfortable sheets or like anything. There are much more factors to be included when we are talking about the public transport system. Then other than that, yeah, the most important point is the personal loss net connectivity, which means like when you want to access the any kind of transport modes, generally if you look at the private transport mode like the two-wheelers, then it is very easy to access because it is very close to your home or it is in our home. So whenever I want to go outside, so then I will take my bike, then I can easily access to the any kind of land use in terms of the commercial land or in terms of any category of general. But if you come to the public transit, so I need to make it travel at least some distance because the bus stops or maybe like any category related to public transportation cannot be served to directly our home. So we need to access by walk or we need to do some kind of activity to travel. So that might be mostly in terms of access. So that means that accessibility is the major concerns of the public in general when we are talking about the public transport system. Let's see that why this accessibility is the one of the important steps or important factor which makes the more reliable way of doing or like the catering of the trips by public transport system. So before that, actually we will try to understand actually why this accessibility term is important. What factors makes it is access or not access. So in that case, like how the city is actually built. Like when I'm talking about the in which case the city has required a kind of public transport system in terms of bus or metro or any other category of the mode in general related to the public transport system. So if you want to look at that point actually, then I need to understand how we are categorizing the cities first of all, and how we are going to look at the land use cases and how the land uses of the different parts of the city will be accessed. So then what kind of the transportation network is available and what are the different category of the modes in terms of the public transit again. But in India, when you are talking about the public transit, so the paratransit is also included as the part of public transit system in general. So then we need to understand how the paratransit will be makes more effective way of operating of the public transport system. Because if you want to access the public transit, generally if you divide the trip entire trip length actually, so then the part of the trip will be accessed by your car. And how this integration will make more effective way of operating a public transportation in Indian context is very, very important. So with that, so there is some of the introduction parts of the content like urban transportation system, then the transit characteristics and the transit system and the transit performance indicator generally, and what are the issues with respect to the transit system in general. So when we are talking about the performance, that even in the morning session also you might have listened, some of the factors are like we are going to talk about when you want to do some study related to the public transport system. So then it is very important that actually, okay, what are the indicators to be collected? How you are going to collect these indicators? Or what kind of the data will be important for you? So that means the data will make that to understand what you are actually studying. So if you want to study the evaluation of the public transportation system, then the system is including all the category of the mode. It is not relevant to the only bus or maybe any other category of the rail mode system. So that means I need to include both together. So then if you want to include both together, then the scheduling of both are same, it might not. Then I need to take as indicator in terms of the scheduling of the both modes of the bus as well as the rail. So then I need to look at that how the performance can be available. So that's the way the characteristics of the transit system will be depends on the characteristics of the individual transport, public transport nodes. So then again that might depends on the capacity, then the frequency of operation, and how flexible we can operate it. So there are different factors again impacting on the characteristics of the transit nodes. So let's start that actually. Okay, according to you, when will be required a bus system in the city? Forget about the regional transport system. So when I'm talking about the regional, generally it will be required as a bus when you are connecting any particular part of the town or the city to the any rural area. So that means I need to understand what is the setup of the rural. So that kind of rural maybe part of the entire country probably. So then I'm going to divide some parts of the country into the major megacities, then the major cities, then the Tier 2, Tier 1, Tier 2 city categories, then again some towns, maybe something like that. So then if you look at that, so this is the continuum, so then the rural, then the village and the towns, and the metropolis, and the urban emerging areas, and the secondary cities, there are different categories of the city involved. And all these cities, all these categories will be having the different numbers in the population in general. So according to the population-based cases, then we are going to look at that when we require a system. So then if you look at that, so this is the 100 habitations in the particular maybe area probably. So with that, so then the 5,000 habitations in as like village, then the 50,000 like the town. So then the city will start maybe probably like 1 lakh. And then if you want to operate a public transport system, that means it indicates that at least we need to have a 1 lakh population. Why this population will be interconnected with the public? Any guess? Until unless with no population, why you want to operate this? Yes. Ultimately, because we need to understand that what is the demand for the different transport modes. Look at the village. There is no much demand to the regional transport. That's the reason the operation of the particular bus will be very less. Maybe I can operate to the particular village one time per bus. So some of the villages still in India can be operated one bus. Even there are some villages there is no bus. Okay, so that's the reason actually. So we need to understand that the population will be makes that the impact or maybe like kind of the demand to the transport modes. Then if you go to the metropolis, maybe like we need to look at the some category of the transit system, then the bus will be required here. Then if you bigger and bigger cities, or maybe like increasing of the population, then we require some kind of other category or like the very high performing transit system will be required. The high performing transit system may be probably like your metro system or maybe like any other category of monorail or like any other category of the transit system in India. So the minimum population, if you are serving the city like the 1 lakh, it might be understand that actually okay, we need some kind of the transit system. That is the exact entry level of the transit system. So even if you don't have that kind of the transit system, but still this can be served or maybe like some category of the transit system or like paratransit, probably like your operates, or maybe any other category of the mode. Still, these modes will become the category under the transit. We generally call it the paratransit in India in general. So now, if you understand it actually, like if you have the one part of the city, if you are taking, so then how we are going to access the different categories of the land uses, and what are the different types of the land use available in them. Then if I need to understand, okay, what are the different setups of the cities, how we are the total entire pocket of the land will be divided for the different purposes. So why these purposes are important? Like if I look at the some city like Hyderabad, if I'm taking, so some part of the city is very important that what purpose this pocket of the land will be allocated. So whether it is the pocket of the land is serving for employment, like let us assume that this is the employment zone. So then when you are dividing this particular land use as the employment zone, then I know that what are the characteristics of the people of the particular commuter who are actually traveling into the land use pocket. So that means I can easily understand what is the time of the day that people are making the trip, what is the time of the day that people will be reversing their homes, and what category of the modes they are using, what makes the people, the trip length corresponding to that particular land. So there are different kind of the travel characteristics can be extracted based on the land use cases. I hope it is understandable. Any questions or any point to be discussed? Is it okay? So let's, with that actually, so now we have the transportation, then based on the transportation system, like we have the infrastructure needed, so what kind of infrastructure will be required, and what are the different types of the modes will be serving to the different pockets of the lands, and then who are the users of these people, like who are the users to access of these land uses. So then based on that, the spatial footprints of the land and the spatial interactions of the land can be extracted. What it means that actually, like if I want to look at that, so how the city is growing day by day. Like if I'm looking at the city like Hyderabad in 1970, then the city like Hyderabad, if I'm looking at the 2025, then you can see the bigger picture of this. So then the trip length at the 1970 hardly maybe like 4 kilometers or like 3 kilometers. Now if you take up, now it is almost reaches to the 25 and more than that. So which means that the urban form day by day is growing loose. Then based on that, we need to divide the total entire land for the different pockets. Then we need to understand what are the different land uses and what is the modes is scattered to make the trip between these land use pockets. So then the activity, what kind of the people are actually moving? Maybe kind of daily wage laborers probably, or there may be different categories of the customers or employees or the suppliers. Different types of the categories of the people can be expected to move and interact with respect to this land uses. Then I can easily understand based on these categories of the activities, then how and what they make the trip and when they make the trip and what time they make the trip and what mode these people will be used. So mostly these daily wage people generally access by the public transit system than the customers are maybe like daily employees, maybe like the higher category or higher income level employees. So that means their level of the trip and the time of the trip and the access mode of those people will be completely different actually. So then this activity makes to understand that what is the kind of level of interaction with respect to the land with respect to your transport system in there. So then finally we will understand if you try to draw a kind of the desired lines, then we will understand what is the total amount of the trips will be activating. It is interacting with respect to the one particular land. So that means that might be the emerging land pocket, which makes the more number of trips. So then if you look at that, so it is also depends on that what is the access is available to the different land uses event. So then the accessibility, then the convergence, the integration. Like you have more integrated, then I can see that expected high number of transit use will be increases. So that means that actually that if you are actually integrating all the modes together, what are the modes that are available in general like the transit itself. So then the people will be access of those pockets of the land easy. So that means the high level of the demand to the transit can be increases with respect to integration of the transit modes and the converging of the different categories of the trips into the single category or like the multiple category to be converged all the time based on your network level. So then I need to make the access is more and more, so then more number of trips can be accessed by your public transit. So that means the accessibility and the convergence and your integration makes the more number of public transit trips or maybe converting of general private modes to your public transport modes. So then based on that the infrastructure requirement, so then I can categorize that what is the level of infrastructure will be required for the categories as the highways and the total infrastructure will be required as the rail. Suppose if I am taking like mega cities in general, then what is the length of the metro will be required and what is the total amount of the public transit network will be required. So I can easily estimate that, then based on that I can easily categorize that what is the total length of the network will be required for the bus and what is the length of the network will be required as the metro or like the subways. So then I can also integrate try to understand that what is the land use will be serving for the flight related trips and the mixed cases and the population based cases. Where these population based cases will be mostly talking about the employment zones or the shopping related trips or like the recreational categories of the trips. So then these activities, so that I have the land use, then I have the requirement of the infrastructure. Then what is the serving of between these two based on the activities like terminals how many such kind of the terminal system will be required at the birth phase, and where this kind of manufacturing and the distribution of the serving systems, and what is the where the commercial lands will be located, where the institutional lands, maybe in terms of bankings or like the maybe educational institutions, the residential homes, where it can be located. Based on that, I can easily connect there my transit. Okay, this is the pocket of the your residential zone. This is the kind of the land use serving for the residential, and this is the kind of employment zone. If I want to connect this, okay, there should be some kind of infrastructure will be required as the bus or maybe like the metro can be understood. So then these are the total land use pockets will be like I can see that this is the maybe like CBD area probably. So then this is the pocket of the land as institutional. This is the kind of home or maybe any other category of the recreational. So then it will be it has to be connected. So then we can understand that there is a categories of the trips like the home to the work, like work to home, like shopping, social activities, and maybe other categories of the commercial can be categorized, which means that so I can easily understand based on these cases like how many number of trips can be generated as the home-based trips, like the like non-home-based trips by transit system. So that means I need to understand so the total number of trips given in the city, how many catered by the public transit, how many is catered by the non-public transit system and the private modes. So finally, if I'm including all the continents like the towns and cities, so these are the categories of the modes will be required. So kind of a transport system will be required, and the road, rail, so the itself will be based on the scheduled system, and sometimes like the chartered flights or like the specific flights, the private flights will be operated their own respective. So in the road, so then the car, taxi, bus, the motorcycle, micromobility, walking, these are the categories of the trips can be catered in the roads. And the rail, if you look at like intercity, then the high-speed rail system, the transit, subways, metros, and the commuter, light rail transit system, monorail, even like new metros, or like other categories of the transit system also can be included in the rail. So then the maritime ferries and the roll-on-roll ferry operating system, then your cruise and the high-speed, even high-speed ferry or like the cruise are also available generally in the maritime category. So of course, these are like some, we don't have all the categories related to the public transit. Mostly the public transit involved with the road and rail. So less operating system with respect to the maritime as the air. So there is no public way to operate these two categories in general. Now, if you look at the landscape of these categories with respect to all the categories of the trips, so then what is the landscape of the city? First of all, this landscape will give the what is the length of the trip generally. So that means suppose if I'm comparing the two cities, so some of the cities might be having the length of the trip within the like range, maybe like the within the 10 kilometers, but the some of the cities having the range of 10 to 20 kilometers. So what we are going to understand by this length of the trip? So can I get that based on the length of the trip? So whether this length of the trip can be operated by public bus, or can I operate it with respect to the maybe metro or maybe like the monorail or maybe like kind of your neo metro, something like that. So it may also give some idea what category of the transit system will work out for the particular city based on the length of the trip. So that means the landscape may resultant into the length of the trip by different categories of the modes. Then what is the economic process of the city, or like you can also understand that what is the average income levels of the cities of the particular categories, and what are the demographic process. Like when we are collecting the data, mostly we are very relevant in terms of collecting of the data demographics, like particularly like the gender, age categories, or like the material status. There are different types of the demographics generally being collected. So based on these demographics, we can also understand that who are actually accessing of the public transit. So suppose if I'm asking like cities like in Hyderabad, mostly I'm expecting the people from the Telangana. So then if I'm asking the question like, so according to you, the public transport is accessed in Hyderabad by male is more or female is more? As per current condition, female is more because everybody knows that there is a free public transit system operating by Telangana state now. So according to that, now if you see that actually even the male, according to the very recent news article, the male are very rarely accessing the public transit. So there is shift is happened between the male users of the public transit users from the bus to the auto rickshaw. So this is the very recent article by you actually. So there are different. So that means the demographic process is very important to understand the what kind of the public transit system to be operated in this. Like some of the cities they are operating exclusive buses for women to increase the women safety in the bus. So then that might be indicating that if you have more number of women passengers in the city, then I can make the women bus policy for the particular city. The same way the technological changes. So do you have any idea of mass mobility as a service system? So if you have the technological shift or technologies of any particular city, that makes more integration and more prefer to use the public transit system. So that means the technological changes will be indicating the behavioral changes. That behavioral changes indicating or resulting to the behavioral travel behavioral changes. So the people might interest in the public policy. That's what actually we have already discussed that. The public policy is very important factor which makes the change in the activities or the kind of shift in the public transport system. So that means based on these cases are the kind of factors, there is the activity patterns will get changes, then that may impact in your transportation. So that are also indicating that the accessibility to the particular system will get changes. Why these changes? Suppose if I am taking the case of the technological changes, if I have a more mass, like the technological change as the mass, then I can know that what is the kind of integration, level of integration of different categories of the modes. Then that may indicate that okay, what mode I can use if I want to access as the land use pocket of my house or like residential to the land use pocket of my commercial or maybe any other category. So that might give the list of all the available modes, what is the time it will take, what is the amount it will take, everything. The trip length, the trip price and everything it will be given. So that makes the accessibility is more and more when you have the technological changes in the system. So obviously, so that may increases the land use of the different categories or parts of the land pocket of that particular city. So that means if you have more and more access, then there is more and more land use of the particular pocket of the land. That might increase even the land cost of those pockets. So then there is more demand to that particular land area. So then based on that, we can see that so if you have the average speeds and the accessibility if I'm taking together, so then I have more access, then obviously it is the comes under the categories of the collector and the local streets. So then the mostly used mode might be like the walking and the rickshaw. So that means we have the segregated case of this auto rickshaw or maybe any other categories of the power transit system. Then I have the highest categories of the speeds as the rail. But if it is not integrated together, what happens actually? People want to access your transit system as metro. So then the people will know that what is the time scheduling of the metro, but they don't have that integrated way of the scheduling patterns with respect to your auto rickshaw or any other categories of the modes. Then if it is integrated, so then we have the accessing of those modes will be increases. Then based on that, we have the more and more demand can be created with respect to transit system. So that may give the more idea corresponding to the, let's see this figure. So now let us start with respect to if you have the more number of trips, then the more transportation needs of the particular mode will be increases. And the transportation facility, that particular categories of the facility will be increases. Then there will be more and more access, then the land value will increase, then the land use rate will be increased. So this is the kind of circle can happen. So that means we have the land pocket which is not accessed earlier, but we have created a kind of infrastructure to access the land pocket. Then there is more access, then there is more land value, then obviously more number of trips will be generated to that particular land. So then based on that, we can segregate it into the two levels as the transport system and the land use. Let's see, start with respect to the land use cases. So then if you are increasing the accessibility to the each and every pocket of the land, so that land will be more and more attractive. And the location stations of the particular users or like the users will be increases. So that means earlier if I want to travel a corner of the pocket of the land, so then there is no mode is available, so then it is very difficult to access that particular land pocket. So then obviously it is discouraged to the user to access the land. but I have created, it is more easily access to that particular land by creating of infrastructure, by integrating or by connecting of some categories of the modes, then obviously the location distance of the particular land is increased. So the location choice might depend on your land use cases and the integration of the land use, so making them more and more attractiveness. So then the construction activity of those land pockets will increase, then the location distance of the users will be increases, and the more and more people will move. Earlier everybody wants to settle at the center of the city. Now the people might shift to the outskirts of the city because it is more access and all the activities can be happen at the outskirts. So then there is more and more activities, then the power ownership of the people will increases, and the trip destinations respect to this category of the mode will increases, and the destination choices will be increases with respect to the specific to the personalized modes. Then the mode choice will be distinguished, or like mode choice will be separated. Then the different categories of the route choice will be there. Then the lead on the roads will be increases. Then the finally to make create the demand on the different links and the demand for different modes. So that means that may create the different categories of the demands the mode as well as the different demands the routes are made like the network can take. Now based on that, actually, like if you have the more attractive land pockets and the more and more access to the land, so then what happens or what going to be expected here? So then the population, because we know that actually the urban population is growing very fast and fast. Almost 50% of the people are expected to live in the urban area as per the recent statistics by the UMATA. So then according to that, it is expected almost 35 to 40% of the people are expected to live in the urban areas. Then based on that, there is a more and more population of the urban area is increasing, and the more and more scattering or maybe like the increasing of the urban form can be expected. So based on that, the increasing of the urban form can be resultant into the increasing of the trend. Now if you see the Indian cities, mostly like Mumbai, of course, this data is corresponding to the 2011 census actually, but still it needs to be modified. Now it reaches the 28 kilometers. So now if you look at the Hyderabad, it is stated here is the 15 at the 2011. So it's around 11, something around 11 kilometers. Now if you see, it is around 18 to 22 kilometers. The trip length of the average trip length of course, the average trip length by different categories of the modes will be different in general. If I am taking as the public transit mode, it is around 18 kilometers. So the same way, like if you see that these are all the type 2 cities can be expected maybe very close to the 2025, 2030, the trip length will be beyond 10 kilometers. So then when the trip length is increasing beyond the 10 kilometers, it is expected there is a more and more need of your public transit system. With the increasing or the integrated public transit system will be necessary that to minimize there are diverse kind of negative impacts with respect to the moderations of the vehicles using of the commuters. So now why it is happening actually? Like why the trip lengths of the different categories of the modes will be increasing? If I am taking a kind of car, particularly the people even accessing in Hyderabad almost a 20 kilometer radius, because the most important factor will be your per capita income. Like even this is also according to the 2011 census. So then if you see that actually, so the per capita incomes of the cities in India, so the Delhi it is identified as the 4.4 lakhs per annum, not per annum. Okay. So the average income levels of the people in the Delhi city, and the average income levels of the like the Telangana, it is almost stated as the 3.09 lakhs. So then if you look at the average income levels are increasing, obviously it is increasing of the purchasing capability of the people, then the people will purchase more and more private modes, particularly like two-wheelers or maybe other categories of the maybe like the small cars in general. So then it might increase your growth of your private vehicles, then that might be damaging your urban area in general. So the increasing of the congestion or like the environmental damage, adverse effects. So then there are other more number of damages can be expected because of the increasing of the private vehicles. So then if you see that actually, so this is also corresponding to 2011 census data. So as the number of vehicles per million, if you see this is the total number of vehicles. So then if you look at the two-wheelers, it is drastically has increased, almost is the exponential growth. So that means that actually the purchasing capability of the people in each cities is increased drastically. So that means like if you see that it is the reverse trend, or maybe I can say maybe it is not reverse trend, maybe it is stabilized. The increasing of the buses is not seen in this figure actually, but the increasing of the two-wheeler and the car is very high. So that might understand that actually, okay, there is a kind of the required number of buses to operate a 1 lakh population is stabilized almost, or maybe it is not giving the total amount of the budget in such a way, but the total number of vehicles correspond to the increasing of the per capita income has increased. Which means that, so finally the resultant of the increasing of the private vehicles, so there is a lot of travel time has increased, then the fuel consumption has increased, then the congestion has increased. So there are so many negative adverse effects can be resultant of the increasing of the private or like motorized transport. Let's see that actually what can be done with this. Like if you see the vicious circle of the car and the public transport system, so like increased income levels, there is increasing of the car ownership or like the private transport mode can be expected. So there is a more and more congestion and the delays can be expected, and the less mileage for the bus, which might be indicating that if you are taking the average 1 lakh population, what is the mileage is traveled by the car, mileage traveled by two-wheeler, mileage traveled by bus. If I am comparing with that, so the bus mileage travel is less compared to the mileage is taken by two-wheeler and the car. So then the increasing of the bus operating cost, because if the more and more delays, so then there is a more fuel consumption can be expected easily. So that might be indicating that there is a more operating cost for the bus might increases. So there is an increasing of the fares because of the increasing of the operating cost in general. So then the car becomes even more attractive than the bus. So that is the final result of this average income levels, or maybe like the increasing of the private modes in general in the cities of Indian cities. So then it is also kind of reduced demand for the bus, and the reduced bus frequency can be expected. So if I want to break it, actually, what can I do? Or what can I expect to do as the policy making? So if I want to break the circle, so there is an increasing of the income, there is increasing of the two-wheeler and bus, so two-wheeler and car. So then that might be indicating the operating cost of the bus, or maybe like operating cost of the bus might be increasing, expected to increase, then increasing of the fares can be happening. So if I want to break this circle, I want to make them motivate towards the public transportation. What can be done? Any idea or any guess? Okay, increasing of the bus.
Like don't reduce the frequency. Keep on bearing the loss. Don't let the car become more
Congestion price policy can be implemented. Okay, congestion price policy. Parking policy very good form. Infrastructure to the public transportation can be expected to increase. Any other points? So you might be knowing the stories of the Singapore and London probably. So if you see that actually like the stories of the success stories of the Singapore generally, they have increased a lot of registration fees to the private vehicles and the parking charges. If you compare the parking charges of these countries of Singapore, particularly like London, the parking charges of India is very less. So if you don't have such kind of the policy making decision, the parking charges, controlling of the parking charges, then people are more attractive to the car. So I can make the break at the something as the negative to the car users, make them to okay. Good. If you want to travel by mandate to travel by car, okay, you can travel, but you need to pay for this. Okay, if you want to travel at the morning 9 to 10, okay, you need to pay extra 100 rupees using of the same day. At the congestion price, or at the destination choice, you can increase the parking charges. Then people might think at least one time, if they want to travel on the link, probably, or if they want to travel, or if they want to access to the destination choice. So because I kept a parking charges at the destination choice, and I also kept a kind of congestion pricing policy on the link. And apart from that, I can make some kind of incentive what I'm getting from this price with respect to the car users. That price can be transformed to the public transport users to make some kind of incentive to them. Okay, if you want to travel during the morning peak hours, okay, there is a reduced price of 50% probably, or like you can give some kind of free bus pass, or like they're using maybe like Western countries, if you see there is HOV lines, high occupancy vehicle lines. So you can make them, that is make the policy in such a way that to operate the infrastructure without touching of the much cost. So you have the 3 lanes, 1 lane can be given completely for the bus. Probably. So that way we can make the break of this circle. So that's the way it is the average income increment, then the higher car one shift model shift of the car that they have happens. Then there is the excess of the car demand, so that might be resulting of the congestion. So I can make them so there is a one way of the breaking at the higher cost of the infrastructure supply. So that means I can make the one policy here to operate as the HOV lines. Then the lack of the public transport, I can make the one policy as the kind of incentive to the public transport. Then I can make the one policy here as the making of the different condition price policies, or like kind of destination choice policies, price policies like that, maybe like parking charges. But ultimately, if you are not attempting these, there is an excess car demand that might be resulting of more congestion and higher energy consumption. There is a lot of environmental issues, or there is a kind of economy. The GDP can impact with respect to this increasing of the congestion. You might have seen the Forbes reports of the 2019. So then there is a loss of GDP because of the congestion in the cities like particularly like Bangalore, Pune. There are 4 cities in the top 10 or like top 10 cities in the entire world. There are 4 cities from India which has the highest congested cities. So there is a loss in the GDP because why it can be expected loss in the GDP? Because we are consuming of the fuel, so we are importing the fuel. So when you are importing the surcharge of the fuel charge, that makes more and more burden to the government. That makes the loss of the GDP. So that may impact in that actually, like the economy way. So now if you look at that, so okay, with that, so there are some cities that are already operating the public transport system, but it is what is the effectiveness of these public transport system? We need to have understanding the different characteristics to be identified, to be studied, then to be evaluated. So, but these are the different kind of cities having the different categories of the public transport systems. Like if you have look at this, like suburban railway system, like we have a suburban railway system in Hyderabad, Mumbai, Pune, and the Delhi and the Chennai. These are the major cities we have a suburban rail. And the metros, of course, recently there are different cities that are coming up with the preparing of the plans for the metros and the bus rapid transit system. Of course, it is not that success in India, apart from the Ahmedabad city, but mostly there is a kind of difficulties to make the improvement or maybe like the success rate of the BRTS in Indian cities actually. But there are different other categories of the transit system like monorail. Of course, it is also not that success, but it's still we have some length of the transit system as the monorail in Mumbai, and the tram still we have present in the tram in the Kolkata, some of the cities. So these are the mostly cities we have the public transit system. Like what we can understand here, what is the kind of the cost of these transit system in India? Mostly like if you look at that. The Mumbai, Delhi, it is the kind of 2.3 to 2.62. Of course, it is per kilometer with respect to the all the prices with respect to the dollars, not in the rupees. But if you look at that, the other cities of the world, like the Zurich and the Amsterdam, if you look at that, what is the trip cost of these public transit systems? But still, we have a very less cost compared to the major cities in the world. But still, the operating is not that success compared to the other categories of cities. So, like if you look at the cheapest is the Delhi, it is $0.22, but if you look at the Rotterdam, like Netherlands, 3.8, and then London is 7.5. So these are the costs, and these are the taxi costs with respect to the cities in India as well as the cities in the world. So 2.32 as the operating cost, as the $2.32 in the Mumbai. In the Zurich, if you look at the $46.26. So it is very, very higher than Indian cities. So, of course, we have seen in the morning lecture also, like what is the modal share of the some of the major cities in India. Like if you see the two-wheelers, so almost So this is the study done in the rights by 2007 and the DIMS in the 2018. So the rights according to that 21.5% of two-wheeler and 28.3% two-wheeler. But if you look at the transit, so the 0.6% of the time the intercity and the taxi like 6.9. So if you look at the metro, 3.7% trips are carried by the metro and 16.6 by the DIMS. In the bus, 23.6 and the 48.2. So these are the two different studies happened in the 2007 and the 18. So auto rickshaw also a very significant number of trips are carried. So 6.8 according to 2007 survey and 11.4 according to the 2018 BIM studies. So then the Mumbai, so like look at the numbers of the walking is 17% there, then the bus 15%, and the motorcycle 6, and the auto rickshaw is still at the 2% significant number, but look at the car 6%. But this number shows that very less number of trips carried by car, but still the cities are mostly congested most of the time in the entire day. Of course, and if I'm offing the non-commuting hours. So if I'm taking the commuting hours, morning line like 8 to the up to 6 p.m. So mostly these cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Pune, everything will be get congested. But the number of trips started by the private modes much lesser compared to the public. Why? What happened? Why this congestion still it is there? Any question marks? Any point or any idea? See, number 3 that actually 15% is carried by bus, but only 6% is carried by car. Of course, these are the rapid transit system mostly if I'm taking the metro and all. But in the bus, the occupancy rates if I'm taking as the at least a 30 capacity. But the car is the individual traveler. Okay, so that means if I'm replacing a 100 members as an individual traveler by car, so then the 100 cars are traveling, so that can be replaced by just how many? 3 buses. I'm not taking the full demand or like the full capacity bus, like the standing capacity, seating capacity, each and every point. But still, if I'm taking the seating capacity, that so 3 buses will be enough. So which means that it is because mostly it is not having the individual travelers making their own trip from one point to another point as a single travel by this category private bus. So like even if you look at the Hyderabad, so that IPT and taxi together is the 18% and the public transport is 31% and the cars is 9 and the two-wheeler is 42%. So according to the 2016, the Umata survey, that is Urban Metropolitan Transport Authority, Hyderabad Urban Metropolitan Transport Authority. So which means that still there is a significant number will be captured by public transport system. But still, if you see sometimes if you travel in Hyderabad, it is completely congested. Only there is a like 9% trips scattered by maybe probably the individual traveler in the car. So actually, when we are trying to look at the total number of trips scattered by the vehicles, so there is a 30 members scattered by the bus. The total per trip by passengers by the bus is higher, but the per trip passenger by car, individual car, that is a single travel. So there is a more number of private vehicles or individual vehicles are increased actually compared to the total number of trips per person. So per person, obviously the transit is higher. So that's the reason the more number will be coming to the transit side compared to the private. So that is the major point actually we need to understand. So if you want to make them as a carpool, okay, the percent might increases, then the number of trips as the individual vehicles might tend reduce to some extent. So that's the reason. So mostly there is some kind of policies in Western countries as the carpooling, if they are altogether traveling in same land use or maybe like the same office probably. So there are some incentives when you are using a carpool, Like you can also occupy the high occupancy vehicle lanes properly. Something these kind of policies make them, some of the vehicles can be reduced as single traveler vehicles. So now if you look at the urban passenger transport mode, like we have the classification by usage, like the private transport, that is the own usage, that is the individual categories modes. In the paratransit, still it is the demand response. So that means I can travel by maybe like kind of paratransit or like an auto rickshaw as the individual, but I can also travel by together. Okay, so that means maybe the shared system something like that. In the transit, that is the common carrier in the mass transport system, and the public transport, that is the transit as the plus your paratransit system. So these can be categorized in terms of the right-of-way system. So we have the 4 different classes of the right-of-way in general. The strip of the land which can be for the corresponding to the specific transit vehicles operates. And the right-of-way C can be categorized as the mixed traffic case. That means a bus will be traveling together with respect to all the category of the vehicles. And the right-of-way is physically separated. Maybe like kind of your bus rapid transit system probably. So that means it is physically separated exclusive lane for the bus. Or maybe like even tram. So exclusive track for the tram even, but it is traveling along with the other category of the modes. And the right-of-way fully controlled, which means maybe like your monorail, metro, or like new metro in some extent. All these categories will fully segregated probably. Maybe sometimes subway or like your grade separated transit systems. So what makes this simply right-of-way? So there is an equity issue set. Let us take the at some point of time you have the passengers of the 1000 members. Okay. Now you pick the 1000 members and try to understand that out of these 1000, what are the categories of the modes? Like I have divided it out of 1000. Let us assume that 500 catered by bus, which means traveled by bus. Remaining 500, then the shared by auto rickshaw, car, two-wheeler, maybe other categories. Then altogether, so 50% of the trips catered by public transit, and the remaining 50% is catered by the other categories of the mode. Now, put your infrastructure as the number of lanes. Like you have the 2 lanes one side and you have the 2 lanes other side. Now, out of these 2 lanes, how many lanes you are dedicating for the transit system? Are you dedicating 50% of the lanes for the transit? You are not dedicating it. But 50% of the trips which are traveled at a point of time in a day, which is catered by or which is traveled by or using a public transit mode. But there is no equity when I am looking at the fund allocation time. There is no equity across the passengers. I am more biased towards the private mode. That might be the reason, probably, which indicating that there is a more and more congestion in many cities in India. Because there is the equity problems. As per the equity share, I am not allocated the lanes in such a fashion. So how many number of lanes will be required who are traveling by public transport? If I am looking at that point, then I need to look at that, okay, how many number of people are catered or will travel with walk. Then at least according to the Hyderabad, like 17% according to the Mumbai. So according to this, I need to have exclusive footpaths in the entire network of the city. But whether I have created such kind of the footpaths in the city, most probably when I'm looking at that, so whenever the intersections are there, or whenever we have the grade separated junctions are there, suppose, then I don't bother about even pedestrians at all. That's the reason there is no equity at all in the distributions of the fund allocation of infrastructure as corresponding to the distributions of the modal shares, which makes the inequality in the transit systems or like entire transport mode system. That makes more impact when you are designing, when you are evaluating the systems, when you are looking for the performance of the systems. Okay, that makes that more like the misunderstanding between your requirement of the transit and the private modes. I am more biased when I am looking for the design even, or when I am going for the fund allocation for the private mode compared to my public transit mode, because the walk can be put together with respect to the transit system. Because everybody, when you step down at the bus stop, they need to access the walk. So then when I am looking for the evaluation, then I need to look at that very carefully. What is the right of way will be allocated for the each and every categories of the transit system. that category for your public bus, or maybe like with respect to the transit system of the other categories. Then based on it, suppose if I am evaluating particularly for the BRTS, then I need to specifically look at that what is the right of way is required. Then how you have designed the right of way, whether it is close to the median lanes or close to your maybe your sidewalk lines. So that is also very important. So that's the reason. So the right of way makes more impact with respect to the separation or segregation with respect to the other categories of the mode. Then the definition with respect to the technology sides, then it will be support with respect to the vertical contact between the vehicles and the riding surface, maybe like the road and rail, or like water, air, magnetic system, and the guidance, in the lateral vehicle guidance, the steered and the guided vehicles, and the what categories of the propulsion system, type of heat transfer, that is a kind of energy transfer system like the diesel, gas, petrol, and the control, that is the regulation of the travel of the vehicles. So these are the different types of the technological improvement of the transport mode makes more impact in terms of the rideable quality. There are different kind of operational point of view. Of course, the next one is the service type. Then the types of the trips. Sometimes some of the transit modes will generally work out for very short categories of the trips, but some of the transit will be worked out for the like the higher like suppose if I am comparing the city buses versus the regional bus, mostly the regional bus will be the higher category in terms of the trip compared to the short length of the city bus. And the stopping schedules in the local and accelerated express categories in the time of operation, regular, all of the day, service commuter, peak hour services, special and irregular services. So these are all like service types. So why we are discussing all these points? When you are evaluating a system, I need to understand what categories or like factors or characteristics of the system to be considered into account to understand, to evaluate the performance of the transit system. So then the other categories like the vehicle components, vehicle type, then the seating capacity. Suppose if you want to evaluate what is the total amount of the demand, like the per cap PPHD, per hour per capita demand of the particular bus. So like if you want to look at that, so I need to understand what is the vehicle type, what is the seat position capacity, what is the standing position capacity, and what is the base of this travel, and what is the right of way, and number of stops, and the stations category, and the transport stations, and the multimodal transport stations, and the control system. So these are the different types of the characteristics of the transport mode to be accounted or to be taken into account. Of course, then the transit system characteristics specifically with respect to the category A. So then I need to understand the service frequency, that is the number of transit departures per hour. So obviously, when you want to evaluate the transit system, that is what is the frequency of operation of the public bus, or the frequency of operation of the general metro systems. Then the operating speed, so that is the speed of travel experienced by passengers. Then the reliability, of course, we have the different variables or factors to be accounted in the reliability. That is the percentage of the vehicle arrival with the less than a fixed time duration in terms of the time reliability, or in the reliability in the operation with respect to without any breakdowns, in the reliability in terms of operation with respect to the driver characteristics even. So there are different kind of categories can be considered to the account of the reliability, and the safety number of accidents per million kilometer for the each category or type of transit. And the line capacity, maximum number of persons a transit system can carry past with respect to a duration of the 1 hour case. Of course, then the product capacity, product of operating speed and the capacities of the line. So if you have the speed, then if you have the capacity of the line, then you multiply together, then you will get the capacity as the product capacity. So what this makes, then that explains these factors, why we important, why the product capacity is important. So if you are not bothering about the product capacity, what happens? Because we know the demand of the transit system. I know that in a city like Hyderabad, how many people are demanded to the bus at a particular time of a particular day. Let us assume on Monday, I know the entire travel demand model of a city like Hyderabad. I know each and every commuter, maybe I predicted probably commuter travel demand of the cities like Hyderabad. Then I know that how these people are actually moving and where these people are actually moving and what time of the day and where the location of the pocket of the land. in terms of land use. So based on that, I know what is the demand for the bus. Then based on that, I can easily estimate how many number of buses can be operated according to this demand. Then based on that, I can easily know that what is the frequency, then what is the operating speed. So if I design with respect to the maybe 30 kilometers per hour, or it is maybe like higher side, 25 kilometers per hour. Then based on that, what is the total number of people can be operated if I'm taking a specific time of the day. So if I'm taking actual design, like let us assume the 30 kilometers I have taken as the when I'm calculating, then I know that maybe like 50 members per bus. Then if I multiply, these many number of people will be transported. But in the reality, so then because of the congestion, it might be traveling at the 15 kilometers per hour. Then the people, because of congestion, the people might be interested to shift to the private modes or like the auto rickshaw. Then instead of 50, then there is a drop of 15. Then I have only 35, maybe 30. Then if I am multiplying that, then the capacity has reduced. Then my total operating cost will be increased because I have designed in such a way for 100 members, so 50 members with a speed of 25, then more number of people to be transported. Then that much amount of the ticket pricing I am expecting. Because of the drop, I am expecting 30 into as the ticketing price at a specific time, I may get this much amount. So there is the excess amount. Who will give that excess amount? Because of the reason, there is a kind of increasing of the operating cost of the bus or maybe any kind of transport system in general. So that's the reason my product capacity and the productivity in terms of the quality of the output per unit of the resource, that is the vehicle kilometer, is very, very important to understand how to minimize the operating cost of the bus or maybe operating cost of the transit system in general. Then finally we have the utilization, that is the ratio of the output, that is the per kilometer. I can also understand that according to the wages or according to the maybe like I can put the average income levels of the people who are actually using the bus. Then according to that, what is the per kilometer per space kilometer. So that means if I'm taking a kind of residential middle income group of people area, residential area, then what is the ratio of the people are using the bus or transit system? That can also be estimated the utilization factor of each and every land pocket corresponding to the different per capita income levels. That makes that okay, who are actually interested to use the transit system in the city. So that might be giving very, very easy way understand that okay, where I need to focus to increase the demand for the transit system. That's the way I'm very much interested in the productivity and the utilization factors to understand what kind of the policy makes the impact to increase the demand for the transit system. So then the other, so obviously, until unless if you don't have the proper level of service and the service quality in terms of the comfortable seat or like the comfortable journey or the safety, security, or the reliability, other factors, it's very, very difficult to operate a transit system in any city. So that's the reason the other factors are these very, very important to understand it. So then this transport system evaluation can be taken into the account. So how many people are actually tackled by what to access to the transit, like the private automobiles to the transit and the common carrier services and the other kind of the increasing of the network system as the construction of the subarterial categories and increasing in terms of the para transit together with the bus transit and the passive separations of the mode. And there are different ways to understand this kind of evaluation of the transit system. These are the major important factors to be considered. So then, other than that, we have also vehicle characteristics and the motion, then the resistance to the motion, propulsion types, and the travel analysis and the energy consumption. So out of these, actually the travel analysis, that is what is the trip length of the different categories of the transit system, what is the average trip rates, and what is the price of the trips corresponding to the average trips will be important to understand that what is the change of travel patterns of the particular city when you are making any kind of policy decisions on the transit system. So apart from that, the energy consumption, so then the propulsions, like suppose if I want to make that my public transportation in my city, like maybe like Hyderabad, if I'm taking the example, more sustainable way of operating of the transit system, then I need to understand at present how many number of buses are operating by the fuel then how many number of buses can be converted as the electrical vehicles probably. So then I can make that, okay, the difference of the consumptions of the energy and the differences of the production in terms of the pollution, that makes that, okay, this is the kind of energy conversion from the fuel to the battery electric vehicle operation system, then this is the total amount of the saving of the pollution. So now if I'm coming, so the bus transit mode, so that is the more general way of the transit system to understand in any city in general. So that general characteristics of the bus will be the flexibility, the low initial cost, and the limited capacity. So everybody knows that the capacity of the bus generally as the seating is the 35 to 38 at max. So then the standing, including that, it may go up to the 50, 55, not more than that in general. The vehicle characteristic, that is the operation cost of the bus, then the line capacity, vehicle maneuverability, riding comfort. So sometimes the maneuverability and the vehicle maneuverability and the riding comfort is very, very important factor when you want to convert some of the buses to add articulated buses, something like that, to increase the capacity, the line capacity. So it is very difficult until unless your infrastructure is not supporting, it is very difficult to convert them into the articulated bus or maybe any other kind of increasing of the demand or increasing of the capacity. And we have the different types of the buses in general. Everybody knows that we have the mini bus, standard bus, articulated bus, and we have double. So almost all the category of the buses you can see in the Hyderabad. Is it correct? We have the mini buses in Hyderabad. And we have the standard bus, but we don't have articulated bus, but we have the double decker. Still in the old city, the double decker bus is still in operation. And operations in the mixed traffic, of course, buses still operated in the mixed traffic case. I don't think we have any kind of BRTS system in the Hyderabad, but still some of the cities like Vijayawada, they plan, but it still is not in operation fully, or maybe not even partially, but still the same case with the Vizag. But it is successfully running in the Ahmedabad state. And the preferential treatments, what it means of the preferential treatment. So some priority system can be given, maybe like the priority in terms of the lanes, maybe not even exclusive lanes. Probably whenever we have the kind of junctions, we can provide a kind of occupation lanes for the bus. Or else the preferential treatment can also be treated as exclusive signal system for the bus. Or you can provide whenever the buses are arriving at the junction, provide free green to the buses. Something these are the called as the preferential treatment, which makes the public to attract towards the transit system in general. Of course, the service quality is always an important factor. So now, what you will understand with these factors are characteristics of the bus. Whenever you want to study or make any kind of study relevant to the bus, so these factors to be taken into account. So these are very, very generic factors. Of course, apart from these factors, we need to be considered the other factors like behavioral of the people. You need to survey them. Okay, so what is the reason to use the bus? Where you are traveling by bus? How frequently you travel by bus? What makes motivate to travel by bus? Something like these kind of the questions are like the before and after studies can be make the understanding why the public is accessing the bus transit system in them. So operation in mixed traffic, like bus operation in the urban state required the least investment. The average speeds of the buses are lower than the other categories of the modes. And the equal treatment of the transit and other vehicles is illogical. So that means we can't make them is the equal way of the operations of the bus or other categories of the modes, in specific to the car and bus. So purpose of the transportation is move to the people and the goods, not the just vehicles. You can't create a kind of infrastructure just to operate a only number of vehicles passing of the cost. So that means I need to look at that when I'm creating or when I'm investing a decisions in terms of creating a new infrastructure system, then I need to look at that how many people will be traveled, not the cost. We should not design generally the system for the number of cars or vehicles. We should be designed in such a way, either in terms of the tons per mileage, or you can also look at the number of people per kilometer. So this leads the preferential treatment. So that makes that more preferential treatment for the transit system. So that means, okay, you need to put the more amount of the fund allocation for the public transit system than the private modes. So then of course the service qualities. So these are the some of the preferential treatments. So reserved bus lanes, we can see at the junctions mostly these kind of the categories of the reserved bus lanes. So there is a diversions of the bus lanes at the junctions. So where all the buses are there because it is queued up generally. So the bus can be stopped at all the maybe 10-20 vehicles of the cars are there. Behind of that the bus has to be stopped. If you are treating as a treatment lane, so the bus can be diverted, can be stopped at the beginning of the signal system. So that is the reserved bus lanes and the exclusive bus lanes are maybe like exclusive signal phases can be treated as the preferential treatment in general. So these are the some of the preferential treatment, exclusive signal phases, automatic signal phases, and the high occupancy vehicle lanes and the exclusive lanes for the buses. And the service quality and the reliability in terms of the frequency and the scheduling and the riding comfort, safety, and the area coverage in terms of the route kilometer per kilometer square area. So that means if you are taking entire network of the city, then how much amount of the route in kilometer it is covering by different transit, so specifically the bus probably. So that makes that what is the total amount of the route kilometer covered by your transit system as well. Then according to that the average trip length will be increases, then the demand of the bus will be increases, and the frequency of the operation will be increases, and the lane capacity or the line capacity with respect to the bus frequency will be increased. So that makes more impact in terms of the different increasing of the demands to the bus transit. So come to the rail transit characteristics. So like we have the different types of the rail transit modes. So this classification broadly takes into the account of the right of way, number of cars, and the power pickups, and the vehicle control, magnetic speed, and technologies like the speed car systems we have. So it is earlier not generally known. So then the light rail, LRT system, and the rapid rail transit system like the metro, and we have still neo metro, then the regional rails, and the mono rail, and the skybus. So of course, we don't have still the skybus and the street car, but of course all the different categories of the already present on the operational. So still neo metro still to come of the Tier 2 cities, some of the Tier 2 cities which are planned actually. Of course, the Warangal also planned. Means the survey is already completed in the 2014. The draft is already prepared, but still on the paper. So we also discussed that where the neo metro will be suitable with which categories of the cities. And the qualitative performance of the attributes and the transit lane capacity, way capacity, and the station capacity. So these are the some of the factors. So you can see that actually, so there is a little difference between when you are evaluating of the bus versus the metro. So these are the some of the factors in terms of the capacity to be taken into account for the particularly like the rapid transit system like rail. And the qualitative performance attributes like the basic attributes like the speed, density, frequency, and the work, number of objects transported and the distance, and the productive capacity, product with respect to the capacity and the operation speeds, and the efficiency ratio that is the output produced and the resource consumed, and the consumption rate that the resource needed and the output produced. So these are the different types of the qualitative performance attributes in terms of the capacity to be taken. Like the frequency, like the per 3600, like the per if I'm taking the total 3600 divided by hour, so then how many number of vehicles to be operated? Then the maximum frequency can be taken 3600 divided by max. So then the lane capacity that can be given as the your F max into the n into the PV, that is the corresponding to the number of passengers to be carried, that is respect to the vehicle capacity. If I'm taking a kind of neo metro, which will be like kind of articulated bus, which will be taking generally 70 to 80 capacity in general. So then the n will be the kind of number of units to be attached to the your system, and what is the headway between the two vehicles at the stations, and the HW is the way headway corresponding to the categories of the vehicles. So then according to that, we can easily estimate the total capacity, sitting and the factors attraction of that, the dimensions of the vehicles and the usable area, comfort stand. So how many people can comfortably stand? So then the seat and the standing ratios is also very important. But if you look at the comfort stands, is not applicable in some of the cases like cities like Mumbai, Bengal. So can you know? You have any idea like what is the standing capacity of the suburban train in the Mumbai? generally when I teach this UG course, I generally ask this question. So what is the standing capacity of the suburban train? Can you expect before maybe like 1995 what is the standing capacity at the time? And currently what is it? Okay, so I'm taking a square meter area. How many people comfortably can stand? 1 square meter area. 4 members, comfortably 4 members can stand. So, but currently there are per square meter area almost it is 6 to 8 members. Currently. In 1995 around, so before 2000 actually, so it is almost 14 persons per square meter area. The suburban train of the Mumbai. Just imagine. So if you standing here 14 members in the 1 square meter area, so you don't need to catch any holding of the rails. So you can stand on the area. So that is the way generally it is operated. So of course, based on these capacity values, actually they have understood that the line capacity has to be increased. So that's the reason they have divided into the two categories of suburban train. That is the fast rail system and the slow track system. And apart from that, they have also increased the headway. So earlier it is 5 minutes, now it is the 2 minutes operation with respect to the slow moving, and the 5 minutes with respect to the high capacity, like the fast suburban trains. Then they have also increased the almost 8 cars to the 12 car system. So there is a way to understand, the way to increase the capacity or maybe increase the comfort to the standing comfort to the passengers. Any questions? So then this is the way generally the brake capacity will be understood, that the factors affecting of the brake capacity, that is the distance between the vehicles, then the speed, the brake rate. So sometimes this brake rate is also impact more number of brakes or like more number of stops may create that there is a discomfort to the passengers. They may just may get irritated if there are more number of stops. That's the reason. So people, if you want to travel with respect to the fast moving track or fast moving line, so it may be stopping at the very few stations, like the Dadar and the Karjat. There are very few stations, like almost 6 stations. But if you want to go with the slow moving lane, so it may stopping almost 12 to 14, I guess, in the Mumbai suburban line. So the vehicle control gateway, that is the manual or like the visual operations and operation safety regimes, like the braking regime. So this braking regime also creating the what is the number of jerks can be happens respective to the different categories of the vehicle when you're looking for the transit, like the mass transit systems. Then the station capacity. So mostly the station capacity, if you look at the stopping side distance, like what is the headway between the vehicles, the station spacing, acceleration, the block length, the relation between the consecutive vehicles. The block length, these are important when you are looking for the kind of rapid transit system like metros. So then the relation between the consecutive vehicles, like what is the headway between the two vehicles when you are looking when you are operating with respect to the or when you are going for the higher capacity, passenger capacity. So this is the general comparison between the BRT, metro, and the light rail and the electrical coaches of the metro new case actually. Of course, if we look at that, so the most important factor to be understand. So when you are going for the kind of the light rail transit to the mass transit system, or maybe like metro to the light rail, or with respect to the neo metro. So we need to understand what is the PHPDD, that is the per hour per direction, what is the total number of people are carrying. So now if you see the metro, almost it is the 20,000 people is carrying, then the light rail 13,000, and the neo metro 10,000, still the BRTS the 5,000. But according to the Bogota, so the number is much higher, is almost closer to the rapid transit system. So the passenger capacity for the bus, the 80 to 90, for the capacity of each car is the 400 for the MRT, and the light rail is the 310 capacity for the 250 for the neo metro. So the length will be almost 12 meters typically. The length of the car for the metro is 21 meters. The length of the LRT is the 40 feet. Of course, these will be also important when you are looking for the what is the total amount of the budget allocations when you are going to design or proposing of these categories of the transport. So according to that, so most of these type 2 or type 3 cities are required this kind of metro neo than general rapid transit system as the metro. So which is also mostly the close to the demand will be uh, coming up, or maybe requirement of the per hour per direction per capita per hour per direction of the passenger capacity, carrying capacity is almost closer as like your general MRT system corresponding to your metro near system. So of course it is the double, it is the half of the MRT system. So then we have the other categories of the paratransit system, or generally we have the kind of informal public transport system like the. So when you are looking for these kind of the informal public transport system, so we need to understand what is the capacity of these informal public transport system in general. So then what is the kind of the comfort levels and the safety accessibility. So if I'm taking as the aperture, what is the capacity in general? It should not be more than 3 members, but it is sharing. So mostly 5 members also they are carrying, but generally it is the 3 members. So if I'm taking the Ola Uber, still shared basis. So mostly they will allow even the Ola Uber also 3 members. But if I'm booking my own, so then I can go either individual or else I can go 4 members max. So then you can go in by bike taxi system. So then that max members are not. So then it may indicate that actually these modes are more important when compared to the general categories of the public transit system in terms of their accessibility. So these modes are more and more accessible compared to the general public transport system. So then based on the accessibility, more people are interested to travel by these categories of either informal transit systems or like the paratransit system in India. So mostly these modes are used to access the transit system in general. So or else direct destination choice even to some extent. But mostly if you look at that, so there are some studies, even we have done some study with respect to our PG student, whether these transit system will be compatible or maybe like compatible or maybe like maybe in terms of competitive or whether it is competitive to the public transit or competence with respect to the public transit. Is it competing modes? When it will be compete? Okay, when people are shifting and they are choosing as their destination choice directly with respect to these transit modes or informal transit modes, then these are the compete modes. But when it is complementary, when they are using as the first and last mile connectivity as the access modes particularly. So when I'm looking at at what point of these modes will be coming as the access modes, then if it is the access mode, like what kind of the system or the policy they are in this. So if you identify that point, then we can easily evaluate that. So whether it is the mode as the complementary mode or competing with respect to the public transit system in many of the cities in India. Mostly there are some kind of understanding that the people are at some point of the time these modes are very complementary modes. At some point of the time these modes are very competitive modes to the public transit. So the competence will be involved when you are looking in terms of the time of the day of the trip. So and what category of the or purpose of the trip. So these two important factors are the travel characteristics of the public will understand that these informal transit can be competing with the public transit or making them as a complement. If I am taking the same mode as at the maybe hard times at the 9:30 or 10 p.m. where there is no kind of public transport system, then these are the complementary modes. So this point, when you are trying to understand as your objective of the study, probably to understand or to evaluate the informal transit can compete or complement it to the public transit, then you should include as the one of the important factor as the time of the day of the trip. If you are not considering that factor, then if you are evaluating, then there is no use. So that's the reason. So when you are looking for any specific related to the study, so then what kind of the data, relevant data to be collected. So that's the way. Then of course there are some safety issues with respect to these categories of the modes. So that is also important factor to be considered. So then of course then we need to understand the integration of these different transport modes. that is the route network coordinations and the easy to use intermodal transit sites and the scale up through the tickets and the intermodals and the use of one service to feed another service, avoidance of the duplication by parallel services, and the use of advanced information and the communication service to allow the faster decisions in the plan. So all these can be put into one platform, that is the your MaaS, mobility as a service. So the mobility as a service as integrated way of connecting of the different transit modes, including of your informal transit modes, by understanding the scheduling patterns and the ticketing price and the availability of these modes at the different parts of the destination choices and understanding at the different categories in terms of the time travel time of these modes, what is the total trip cost of these modes, integrated modes, will be giving some kind of single kind of the communication service system as a MaaS will be enabled to how it can be integrated together or how we can make them integrated and use the better way of the transit system. And also when you are doing that, the fare structure is very important. So okay, the total trip cost might be given by based on this MaaS, but how this trip cost will be segregated when you are disposing to the different stakeholders, because you have operating of the public transit one side and you have the operator of the informal transit. So how you are making them to distinguish your total trip cost. So then the all modes and the whole area of collection outside of the system and the information system, the vehicle to the way communication and the automatic vehicle locations and the real-time information and the proper information on the system. So that is automatic public transit availability at the different stops respect to the time. So day of the time is very, very important respect to the full communication system to the transit. Do you have any questions? So then the transit system and the destination choices are the station areas, the preferential treatment of the high occupancy vehicle lanes with respect to the bus lanes and the signal free the automatic time prediction systems and the delays are like the speeds prediction. There are different kind of the ICT service will be required, and there are the mobility patterns of these different categories of the modes to be predicted, and these can be supplied to the devices and the users and the cooperation system between different stakeholders and the public authorities. So then finally, who is going to be operated after integrating of these categories of modes? So then to guarantee the city-wide mobility for the growing of the number of people or the more and more demands, so then corresponding to the supply of the exclusive means of travel, the high density areas corresponding to the where the cars are or where the car oriented cities or car oriented areas are there, that need to be focused as the transit oriented cases. So to complement the services rendered by these automobile on the trips that require to the both methods, and to provide the local extensions of the intercity and the global public transportation networks in and help them create the more satisfying and the manageable and the pollution-free and the sustainable urban environment is the one of the main target as the integrated way of public transport systems. So once you are integrating, so then obviously it can be expected the interaction of the transport network in terms of the all the available regional or like the network entire networks of the transit system and the land use cases and the accessibility case and the safety of the different transit modes and the network management and the performance of the transit system, affordability of the transit system can be understood, the value for the money can be understood, then the urban design and the urban interactions of the structure can be estimated, and the demand management of the transit versus the different other categories of the modes can be estimated. At the end, we need to understand what is the behavioral pattern change of the transit mode versus the private mode can be explored. So then there is the different categories of the integration. So there is a way of integration with respect to physical integration. We have the intermodal terminal integration. That means the terminal alone has integrated, but we have not integrated completely with respect to modes because okay, there is the station. So there is the station we can easily integrate. So there are two different categories of the modes may travel. So then if you want to use change of the mode, so that is the possible station problem. So that's the way integrated as a station area. In the transit shelters, so there are some stops can be integrated some extent. And the network integration, that is the coordinated routing and the scheduling. So mostly, so we don't have as the coordinated routing systems like we can integrate them coordinated way. Okay, this is the network route is available for the transit at some point of the time. So that means, so sometimes you can off the particular route network at some category of the modes you mentioned. And the rationalization of the redundant services, so that means you can make them, some services can be completely off and or maybe some direction can be off even. So then the information about the integration, so that means the integration in terms of the arrival patterns of the different modes and the fare integration. So sometimes you can make them as a single fare structure for the all the integrated transit modes together. So mostly these platforms may look like this actually. So of course, the Kochi has already introduced this kind of a platform. So if you want to travel as an integrated multimodal transport system, so then you have the app in the city of the Kochi. So then you can make them use the what are the different types of the modes that are available. You can just give your origin point and your destination point. So then you can keep all the options together. So that is the way the journey planning you can make them. So then the announcements of the stops, so then the number of stops will be there when you are keeping your origin point and destination point. Then the information on the transfers, so then you can also look at that how many number of transfers will be required according to your origin point and the destination point. And the city information, then other categories of the information which will be required. So then finally it is a real-time information system at your end. So this is all about the summary. So that means we are trying to understand when you are looking at the evolution of the public transport system, then we are interested at the different factors to be considered in terms of the characteristics of the transit systems or the different categories of the modes. So then we have the different characteristics of the public transit. So based on these characteristics, so we need to understand what characteristics to be considered when you are part of your evolution of the transit system. And the various categories of the public transit in the urban area. So we already discussed about the different types and the categories of the public transport systems and how it can be integrated. So then once you have integrated, what kind of the advantages can be taken into account even. So these are some of the points we have discussed in this. So if you have any specific questions, then we will discuss. So when you have the accessibility more and more, let us assume that we have the walk generally, or maybe like the very basic para transit. So we can have more and more easily access. But when you convergent in terms of their network system or in terms of the infrastructure system, so then we need to have it integrated together, or maybe like we need to consider together as the walk and the public transit. Let us keep the, so you want to make them access to the public transit. Then I have created a walk infrastructure first. Then it is converged actually. So that means you know when you are having or when you are building a infrastructure to the your public transit system, then I need to make considerations of the walk together with the public transit. If you are not considering, again it will be get paid in terms of accessing by walk. Because until unless if you don't have the infrastructure of the walk as the access mode, so your demand of the transit system cannot be increased. So that means you want to make them more and more high transit usage, then I need to make them considered together when I am building a new infrastructure or cargo. That is the way it is converging at the point of time. That's the integration. So you need to understand it. This more and more walk infrastructure to be created, and it should be integrated with respect to more and more transit corridors. So then it will be more and more making them using of the high in terms of your transit use. So when you are looking at the operating of transit, so I need to understand how many persons per kilometer it is making to transport. At the same time, how much amount of the network I have created as space. I have a city area. So in the city area, if I am taking the transit system as a corridor, then I need to look at that what is the total amount of the kilometer of the space I have created, and corresponding to that, how many number of persons I am making them to carry. Per kilometer distance.
The denominator is city area.
City area.
City area, whatever.
Length of network per
Yes. Because sometimes what happens actually, why this is important, even if you create a corridor as a public transit, but you have not studied in such a way that how many people are demanded to as the destination choice of the particular pocket of land. But you have the network, you have operating a public transit, but the person's kilometer is almost a zero. But you have the space in kilometer, but there is no use of it. That's the reason the productivity is not increasing.
first time at double data. You said some of the speed and more big operations of double data.
There are more.
What are the challenges in double data? Although they add more capacity to the operation, right? So one bus can add more capacity as compared to your regulation. So you don't see the growth. So what are the challenges?
Means I don't have much complete idea, but this is my opinion probably. So there is a challenges to access of this double decker. Even the capacity is more, I agree with that. But accessing of the double decker to the specific to the some category of the people, like the gender or maybe like categories of the case, is much difficulty than the general bus. So that's the reason people they don't want until unless as the recreational trip, the people are interested to travel in the double decker bus compared to the traveling by traveling for commuting trips. Because you are hurry. So let us assume that you are traveling in a double decker bus. So you are hurry in the office to go to office. So you are in the top. So are you expecting that to reaching to the outside or getting out from the bus will take more time than the general bus? And why you are interested to travel by double decker bus? That's the reason. Very simple reason. But hopefully it might be.
Volume getting them down from the top level to bottom will be hard. That will already congested in traditional buses. Getting down itself is hard in high volume. And I think the weight of the bus also. I think the
Operation cost.
Operation cost. Unless
But there are global cities, as an example, who also
so in London they do it, but they're not covering fast moving road. routes, right? They're covering routes where everybody is recreational minded and they don't mind waiting 3 minutes to get down. Imagine like you're in Bombay and you try that, they'll push 5 people out before they get down, right? So that's a challenge.
Bombay also is there. Marine Drive line, they are operating. Any questions from anyone?
Station capacity. So how does site distance come into the picture?
Actually, some stations, let us assume, in very basic, general, when you are designing a transit system or maybe operating a transit system in countries like in India, so mostly the transit stop will be waited after the junction or before the junction. There are two important points to be considered when you are locating a after junction, signalized junction. So then the way is, so the bus will be to be stopped till get turned to the green, then again it is stopped. So there are two stops. So apart from that, the side distances, because at the junction mostly it is congested, so then there is a improper side distance is available, and this bus will be stopped at the mid of the road. Or because of that reason, sometimes this bus cannot be stopped at the stop and it will be late. So then improper side distance makes that's the reason. So sometimes we have the bus bays. They generally create a bus bay to make them more stopping side distance. So that makes that the capacity will be increased because the drivers are flexible to stop at the bus bays. Yeah, mostly bus transit system. It is done. I don't for the metro. I guess there is a one book I have taken from this side and some of these texts from the one of the public transportation in developing countries by Sharma and he is from the our army. He is from the I am Bangalore actually.
How would you differentiate both of them? Are they part of a bigger umbrella, or they can be differentiated?
So that's the reason when you are taking this Ola Uber as the ride-hail services as the individual hiring of the vehicle, it cannot be treated at some point of the time. It cannot be treated as the informal or like the paratransit system or under the umbrella of the paratransit system. But the same Ola Uber will be ready to share the trip with respect to the others can be treated as a paratransit system because it is the demand-driven vehicles. If it is hiring as an individual person is traveling as a single vehicle, cannot. But at the same time, the time of the day of the trip is also one of the important factors when we are considering or evaluating of this kind of Ola system or like network transportation activities.
Communication between shared mobility and can you shed some light on how we are going to identify or control the competition? What are your thoughts on controlling that?
Competing with the public transit. Generally, when you are trying to integrate them with the public transit, like let us assume that the Kochi has introduced this mass as the kind of mobility as a service. In that mass, if you open it actually, so then there is an integrated way of operating specifically the bike taxi system. So when you open it, so then you will get the option, like if you want to travel from your origin to the destination, then it may also show that the yellow bike, I guess that name is yellow bike something. So then it may also show that, so this is the travel time by using of your paratransit or like the informal transit system to be integrated with respect to your other categories of the metro or other categories of transit system. So when you are doing in such a way that it is already integrated, so then it is the complementary mode at that time. But when you're treating as the alone, so like if your people has increased the demand towards to these network service vehicles are like the Polo Uber. So generally the individual demands always it is the kind of not complementary, it is the competing case. Because we need to have some kind of policy in such a way to make them to control. Like if you want to travel by Polo Uber, still you have to pay that particular trip cost along with the trip cost, other charges, maybe like parking charges or maybe any other kind of the congestion pricing policies. So something like that, if you are implementing, then obviously the people will be discouraged to use this kind of the overall
Kind of a negative incentive.
yes, kind of negative incentives. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Any other questions? So it is already 4:10, so we'll make the
outcome of all the opportunities and challenges with the public transport system in India. So what I want to do now is we have only a few minutes, so I want to lay out the plan for how we want to handle the case studies and tutorial a little bit. So basically, what I did is I compiled several case papers on public transportation. They look at different empirical and methodological issues. So some of these again will become evident as we go through. So I'll explain some of these, and then you can read some of these papers. So what we'll do is we'll decide on the based on the enrollment. We want to have one senior student, so PhD or a scholar, and then masters and bachelor students as teams. So we will create teams, and each team should look at about 2 papers. Okay, so students we will decide those by tomorrow, and then you can work during the week. You can look at those and you can ask us any questions at any time you have. And what you will do is you'll prepare probably a 10-15 minute presentation just explaining those 2 papers. So that way everybody will get exposed to all those 15 papers which are relevant in the public transit. Okay. I created list of papers. I don't want to provide the PDFs again. There are I think all of you can access these on NIT website. So clear citations are provided here. So all of this is available. The 14 papers are available. I created the website. So if you go to my website, go to courses, you just type my name, TEMG, it should come up. This website should come up. The NIT Warangal course is here. If you don't want to, you can just do this, and then this should pop up. Everything, the slides that we talked today are there. What I talk tomorrow also are there. Case studies presentations is here. So you can look at the citation and download the papers on your own from NIT Warangal website. If you have any challenges, let me know. I don't want to upload all the PDFs of the papers. I don't want Elsevier on me. So and also I uploaded all the R codes that we'll start using. So if you have time, you want to look at them, take a look, download and take a look at those. These are just basic courses, but I'll talk about these tomorrow in class. So tomorrow's tutorial, we're thinking of doing, if all of you can have access to computers, we can do it here, or we can go to the lab. I'm working that out with the, so if you have your laptops handy in the afternoon, it might be better for some of you. It's up to you. Yes. And today, I and Dr. Agram will decide on the teams and probably convey message, pass that along to you tomorrow. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So make sure you have access to the website and then you can download everything from there. So everything I present, I'll upload right away. I already uploaded videos morning class and we stop in the middle. The case study I'll talk tomorrow and then talk about public transportation. Okay. So yeah. If you don't have the link handy, you can search for my name and go to the website and it's in courses. It's in courses, scroll down, it's there in courses. You don't even have to remember the link. Okay. So we today is the first day, so we'll probably finishing about 10 minutes early. So we'll stop here and tomorrow we'll get started again from the case study that I stopped in the middle.